I was asked to talk about social media. Over the last 5 years, I've talked about social media to conferences with 5 people in the audience, 10 people in the audience, 1,000 people in the audience. Social media turns people off. The word social media turns people off, whether it means that everybody thinks that we're a bunch of internet geeks who want to know what Snoop Dogg had for breakfast, or whether they think that we're just weird and just what we've tried to do is come up with in the pub last night an alternate name for social media, something that might allow other people to come in and enjoy the environment that the APIs of the internet allows us to have. So we've come up with the phone project, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on. See if this works. One of the things when it comes to talking about a subject like this is it's reasonable to talk about atrial fibrillation, something you've had research into. You can talk about a paper really easily. When people ask me to talk about the field of foam, you don't know where to start. You don't know whether the audience is wanting to hear a workshop on how to do it, the do's and don'ts, whether you've got an audience full of skeptics who don't want to hear anything more about it, just want to shout you down, or whether they actually want to see how it works in practice. And so the scope of a social media presentation becomes potentially massive. One of the hardest things to do when you're involved in the social media sphere is to actually distill the essential information and make it relevant to people in the audience. So what we're going to try and do today is work through things nice and simply. There's going to be a variety of different levels. There's some uber nerds here, and there's some beginners, and so we're going to try and just work through how it actually affects us in medical education. The objectives of a group like this, again, very, very varied. What do you want to know? Do you want to know how to use social media in your day-to-day practice, how it's going to affect medical education, what the medical students are talking about, how is it actually going to affect your day-to-day practice? And so we're going to try and quickly run through a lot of those things based on your response. The glazing over your eyes or the walking out will depend on which sections we sort of work through on the talk. Right now, just as a quick hand poll, how many people actually use social media? So how many people have a Facebook account? Okay. How many people have a Twitter account? Oh, all right, yeah. So we've got some reasonable knowledge here. How many people like Google+? Yeah, it's pretty quiet, isn't it? Yeah, not a huge number of people there. How many people have a LinkedIn account? Okay, we did a survey, and with Andy Neal from Emergency Medicine Ireland, we're going to be putting together a little review of those people as presenters, so 212 presenters, their online digital presence. And we're looking at some of the impact statements regarding Simpler, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So that, as an audience scale, puts you well ahead of all the learned speakers. So congratulations. Very well done. There's a number of P's which are involved in social media. There's the personal approach, there's the professional approach, there's your practice, there's the pedagogy, so the actual medical education side of things, there's the productization, so those people who become so ingrained in a particular expert area can actually utilize the power of social media and the internet to actually make money out of it. Everything we're going to talk about today and everything I do is free. There'll never be any sponsorship by pharma or anything else like that. The idea is to get medical education and all the information up in the cloud down to those people who need it, and try and provide a little bit of a filter as we go along. The stumbling blocks to social media. In this room, there's a lot of people who have obviously started dabbling in the field of social media and using some of these applications. The commonest stumbling blocks that we see are us, doctors. Basically saying that it's a waste of time, that it's ridiculous, they don't have time to do things like this. There's a lot of myths surrounding social media and using the word social media and misunderstanding. The generational transmogrification, the ability to go from X, Y, and Z, and understanding what the medical students want and need. Fear and loathing. There's a lot of skepticism about utilising these approaches to be used in medical education, particularly from the major institutions like colleges. We know that Dr. X was growing up with a textbook. The internet itself wasn't particularly available. As the internet became more available and it became more practical to get short snippets of information together, we've got Dr. Y, who's able to actually use iPads and iPhones and Androids and Blackberries to actually gather information. Dr. Z, we're not entirely sure where they're going at the moment. They seem a little bit apathetic. Not really understanding what all the fuss is about. They're just going to wait for us to fix the problem and then they'll use it. Opposition to change, again, given the innovation and adoption life cycle, when it comes to technology, there's always a Gaussian distribution. There's always the innovators, and there's innovators in this room. There's early adopters in this room, and then you've got the laggards who wait for everything to be done, for everything to be filtered, for everything to be fixed, for there to be no issues or problems, a sound set of guidelines, and they're the doctors. And that's generally the group that we're trying to bring into the fold to try and utilise this as much as possible. Is that better? I can't dance about then. Okay.
Turn towards you.
Is that better? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Right.
Just lift it now.
Yeah. So misconceptions, there's a lot of people who see social media for the individual platforms that they are. They try and understand what these platforms actually do. And so when they try and individually get on board with one of these platforms, they try and understand what it is. So this is a basic overview of the way I see that doctors see social media. It's a little bit close to the truth, actually, but what we're going to try and do is dispel some of these misconceptions and consider a new way of, as doctors, utilising the API, the actual protocols involved with social media, and putting this into medical education as a context. This is another little graph. So often when you've got your iPhone out and you've got something interesting to say, you're trying to work out exactly what it is that you're going to discuss. You're trying to work out whether it should be on Google+, whether it should be on LinkedIn, whether it's something that you should tweet, whether it should be on Facebook. And there's so many different applications available to you. So hopefully this will help you determine whether it's going to be something which is going to get you into trouble or get you out of trouble. Principles of social media, so we're just going to briefly touch on some of the aspects of what social media is and how it's defined. So a couple of guys in 2009, 2010 began to try and understand why social media evolved, what exactly it was that drew so many people, so many millions of people into this space. The 7 basic building blocks of social media, which is the identity and conversations, the sharing, their presence, so being able to have an identity, creating relationships and communicating with other people, and ultimately having a reputation, and that reputation being present online, forming groups as well. The building blocks themselves are put into types of applications, the applications which we use every day, so collaborative projects and blogs and microblogs. All of these basic types and building blocks give us the overview of where social media is today. And what we're going to try and do through the course of this is understand how we as a physician group, particularly emergency physicians, can use all these principles and put them together without necessarily using individual named products like Twitter and Google+, but use the concepts of this to help us provide free medical resources to everybody. So FOAM, that was Parnham Guinness that brought up the acronym, Free Open Access Medication, being able to actually provide a level of medical education to a large number of people to allow a degree of interactivity within that space without any cost constraints, without pharmaceutical companies coming in and paying for everything. We're able to try and create an online community, and emergency medicine far outstrips any other group of physicians telling us giving information, sharing information, collaborating. Emergency medicine, largest number of blogs, largest number of Twitter user groups, largest number of Google+, most attended at conferences. Everything about emergency medicine says we want to learn, we want to engage, we want to be in this together. The more people we can get involved in that, the better this education resource will be. To try and get some analogies going, to try and explain, over the years I've tried to explain why social media, why the use of these applications is useful in medical education. Using things like UIs and APIs and other terms confuses people, and they freak out at the geek speak that comes out. So we try and understand your personal role in medical education. What you want to do is understand how to create your digital footprint, how to take care of your digital footprint, and how to get involved in medical education without getting confused and bemused by all the different media that's out there. So the commonest one that I use is the garden, and so we think of the internet as the third coming. It's omnipotent, it's omniscient, it's omnipresent, it is there. It is always there, it's all-seeing, all-knowing. The internet is around us all the time. The garden approach tells you that you're looking out of your window and you're looking at the garden and you have three different options which are available to you. The first one is the typical doctor's response, which is the head in the sand, it's not going to affect me, the internet will continue on around me. I'm going to carry on doing what I've done for the last 50 years, stuff it. As you close the curtain on that garden, lots of other things happen. Weeds begin to grow, discussions occur, your name is taken, your papers are taken, other things happen. So as an example, I was speaking to a colleague a couple of months ago who was trying to get involved in social media. So the first thing we did was we Googled his name and found the first 10 things about him on Google. The first 10 spots on the first page of Google were about his recent divorce to a family lawyer, were about basically criminal court laws, all these other things. There wasn't anything there which said who he was, where he was going, what he was doing, nothing. And this is somebody who's a highly published emergency physician. All of that had been moved out of the way because Google, in its attempt to try and get as much accurate information as possible, has clouded everything else. He hasn't been able to take control of his own digital online presence. So the first thing you can do is to Google it. So the second type of person will mow the lawn, which is effectively Googling yourself, understanding where you stand in the social media hierarchy, and then picking simple, straightforward landmark apps which aren't going to disappear: LinkedIn, Twitter, Google+, Gmail account, and you can create for yourself something which is easy to manage, easy to tend, just pop out every so often, just make sure that everything's under control. You have a presence, you have a controllable presence. You've chosen the top 4 things which are going to be the top 4 findings on Google. You're able to be found, you're able to be interacted with. The third type of person, most of whom are in the front row here, including you, I take a Covent Garden approach. Basically, they join everything. They have multiple different applications, multiple different platforms. There's a row down in there. So they're basically taking everything that they can to create a brand for themselves. They're able to take control of not the first 4 or 5 spots on Google so that people can find you and know something about you. They're actually taking complete control of branding themselves. So the first 5 pages of Google will be exactly what you want people to know about you. And that's one of the simplest things from a professional point of view. You can take total control of what other people will see about you, rather than relying on Google and papers and other things and your university to put some out-of-date photo of you and some out-of-date information about you. You can actually take control of it. So that's the Covent Garden approach. We talk about the digital footprint. That digital footprint is exactly what Google is. Google is actually looking at, and Yahoo and Bing and all the other search engines, they're actually trying to find information about you. That information needs to be relevant and pertinent to you, your name, your professional capacity as a physician. As physicians, as publishers of research information, we are going to be out there in the public domain. And so we need to just take control of that information. There's two different types of information that goes out there. Your presence, your persona, your reputation. You can deal with that by planting a couple of those seeds, by having a couple of those pot plants out there. What you post, how you post, where you post, if you post, all that information is pertinent to creating your persona. But on the flip side, what other people say about you, tag you in, and post about you, can also be a negative thing. So taking control of the apps, taking control of the applications that you're involved in, allows you to remove the negative comments. Everybody's worried that by being on Facebook, people are going to tag them in pictures and do other things, and we'll briefly touch on that down the track of how you can prevent all that happening. You can actually just dominate your own professional persona. Dr. Vez, clinical immunologist professor in the States. This is the Twitter profile feed, so those people who don't use Twitter, this is basically just taking a single tweet. If you have no internet presence at all, then anyone can control your internet presence, and that's exactly what people do. And taking over your own persona, your own information, is very, very easy to do. And in 30 minutes, you can totally be somebody who has no internet presence at all. So, John O'Donnell, sitting there, I can take over your complete persona because you don't exist as far as Google's concerned. And so it's very simple to do. By setting up a Gmail account, by going through the simple process of setting up a LinkedIn account and other things like that, I can dominate your personality on Twitter. That's the difficulty with internet theft of your personality. By taking control of it in the first instance, you can remove that risk. So digital footprint itself is made up of lots and lots and lots of different things. All these different applications that you can get involved with. The Covent Garden approach certainly is one way of doing it, but the simplest way of doing it is exactly what most of the people in this room have done. They're taking control of the four commonest things that they see every day on Google. And this is just a summary of basically everything that we're talking about now. Creating that reputation, monitoring, not all the time, just popping out every so often. You don't mow the lawn every single day. You just have to pop out every so often, just make sure the plants aren't dying, give them a bit of water, making sure that there's not too much negativity about you and what you're doing. Medical education, simple and straightforward. Educators, learners, a little bit disparate. The idea about being a lecturer, the idea about standing up here and talking to other people is that there is a little bit of distance, and that the educators themselves are trying to take information, they're trying to give it to the learners. It's always been a kind of unidiotic model with just a one-way street. The learners themselves, especially the Gen Y, Gen Zs, they're trying to find more information, search it. What is relevant in that great big huge internet cloud of information overload? How can we bring these guys together? And bringing the educators and learners together, so making the passive learners the active listeners, is part of what the free open access education project is all about. It's all about trying to get these people together, talking, and try and get the information out there. Multiple different platforms, using smartphones, using other applications, using all the things we talked about, the blogs and all those resources, and we'll just touch on those now. That allows us to have that full information cycle. So I see medical education as a complete cycle. We all create PowerPoints, we all create PDFs and videos, and we've all got stored images of ECGs, verbal and written consented photos, all sitting, rusting on our hard drive. By collating and curating that information, by tagging it, by adding information to it, the clinical case scenarios to it, and uploading it to the cloud, that gives us an opportunity then for that information to be disseminated to those people who want to use it. They can use it in multiple different ways. They can tag it in multiple different ways, but it's that dissemination process which technology has allowed us to happen. And then we can assimilate that, create more information, and from that, the cycle goes on. And so that's how I perceive medical education as an information cycle. So doing this talk, I thought some of my virtual friends, who I've actually now had the pleasure of meeting as well over the last couple of years, we'd ask them some questions about what they thought the most useful platforms were. These are highly active people over the last 3 to 5 years, people who have 10, 15, 20,000 Twitter followers, who have blogs which see between 10 and 50,000 readers a day. These are very, very active in medical education. So from their point of view, the most useful way of them getting information out to the community, blog and Twitter, far outreached everything. Now this was done before Facebook changed to timeline. This was done before Facebook became a barren place for medical education. Facebook has definitely fallen away dramatically from the point of view of getting information out to other people and having a conversation. Blogs, Twitter, YouTube, Vimeo isn't on there, but that's definitely coming up and pretty much on a par now with YouTube for getting your content out to the people you want to do. So if we're going to just quickly touch on the different platforms which I think would be useful to you, if you want to join the conversation, and we'll talk about exactly what's happened in this last 3 days from a Twitter point of view, then Twitter is a very good starting point. You want to keep your CV up to date. You don't want a floppy disk drive with 23 iterations of a temp file with a funny squiggle on it. You don't want that. You want to be able to have something that it's about you. And if it's about you, there's no fear of having that about you accurate information out on the web when you can control it. And LinkedIn is a great way of starting that conversation. Everybody in this room should be on LinkedIn. You're professionals, you're physicians, you're working in an environment where having your details, having your research, having your structure is an important presence for you to have on the web. Keep your personal stuff personal. Facebook was designed so you can catch up with college friends, old friends, family, etc., and that's what it's for. And so by maximising your privacy settings, Facebook is Facebook, and you can utilise it for that. Sending little comments, poking people, throwing sheep, I don't know, whatever you do on it, you can do. If you want to farm all day, stay on Facebook. But Facebook from a page point of view, Facebook from a timeline point of view, from a medical education point of view, in my opinion, is dead and buried. Use it for a personal approach with families. Your personal learning journey. I started blogging back in 2007 with an idea that I wanted to I had to try and document what I was doing on a daily basis, the clinical cases that were coming together, the QAs that we were producing. There had to be some way of sharing that information, all that time done researching. I mean, you spent all this time researching, 20 hours to produce a PowerPoint presentation and then it just sits on a USB. That should be shared. It should be there for everybody. Everybody should be able to utilize those resources. Rel equals me, rel equals author. It's a little bit of geek speak, but basically Google is wanting to be more accurate. It wants to make sure that the information it has on you is correct. If you have a blog, if you have a LinkedIn account, if you have these other things, rel equals me. This is saying it's me. I am the author of this. And by using a Google Plus account or just having a Google profile, you're able to say accurately which other accounts are related to you. And that's very, very important from a search point of view and maintaining your own personal brand. Staying up to date, look, you can't go past Google Reader for blogs and podcasts and everything else, and you can't go past Feedly as a Chrome plugin to allow you to actually keep up to date with these blogs. I have 500 RSS feeds which come into Google Reader. It always sounds like a huge amount. It's not an onerous task. It's a fun task to go through and see these. Briefly, just touching on guidelines, the bottom line is that if you're an idiot offline, you're going to be an idiot online. It's just going to happen so much quicker. It's going to stay there for a long, long time. Don't steal, don't reveal. So obvious stuff. You're not going to go home and tell everybody about this particular patient in a particular way. You're not going to go to the pub and do the same sort of thing. So what you don't do, because of our medical code of ethics, what you don't do out there, you don't do online. If you do it online, well, you're an idiot. We can change everything in our online space. We can control everything in our online space. Every case we have has got absolutely nothing to do with the person that actually was that case. And everyone has their own personal rules. I've got a personal rule which is a 2-year moratorium on actual information. And so anything which I've got sits away, and I don't use it in a clinical case for a minimum of 2 years. If I do, change the sex, change the age, change the clinical correlation. Speaking to those eminent bloggers before, top 10 rules of do. This is what they say that we should be doing in the social media environment. Listen, comment, collaborate, be respectful. I mean, commenting and being respectful is an essential part of being part of this community. It's exactly what we do in this room. It's exactly what we do when we network, when we're out of here. It's exactly what we're going to do when we're in the gala dinner tonight, and it's no different online. Give kudos, give praise to other people, add value. You're not just watching the whole time, you're actually adding something to the conversation. Be social, be real, be you. 10 rules of do not. Spam, continuously piling people up with their inboxes, filling and filling. Being anonymous, definitely very, very, 5 years ago. You are who you are. Put your name on it. Own your position in the social media spectrum. Being negative, being mean. Again, everything that you wouldn't do to somebody's face, you don't do when you're online. Twitter, simpler. SYMPLUR. Hashtag @mentions. Hashtag is a way of look, all these APIs, all these different platforms are morphing into one. They're all the same now. Twitter, 140 characters, a quick bit of information. Now you can add a picture, now you can add a video, and as of last month, you can now go more than 140 characters. Google+, Facebook, they're all doing exactly the same thing. They're all taking the best of the best from each other. And one of those things is hashtags. Hashtags allows you to pull together everything. So we've done ICEM2012. So all the Twitter conversation has been hashtagged, it's been marked with that brand. So by checking your @mentions, by checking your hashtags, you're able to follow conversations freely and easily. Quite amazingly, I've just done a little bit of back research for medical conferences versus conferences. In the world, right now, the largest conference with tweets and videos and photos saw 1,340 tweets over a 4-day period, had 400 videos and photos which were put with it. This is the tag board of this conference, day 3. At day 3, we're averaging 1,000 tweets a day, 46 tweets an hour. All are sensible, logical tweets. People commenting on exactly what's happening in the lectures, taking pictures of that lecture, of that slide, discussing it. We're now currently being discussed by, you see the board on the back there, 527 people have been actively involved on Twitter sharing this. We've had 1.75 now million impressions done of the information from this. There are people who are sitting at home waiting for this day to start. There are people in Australia and the UK waiting for the conversation, wanting to hear what's going on. There's 8 streams of lectures. We have people set up in every single room having that conversation. It's real time, it's happening right now, and we've basically just broken everything. This conference here now is the largest tweeted, largest open source conversation of any conference, not medical conference, any conference in the world. And there's still a day and a half to go. That's the power of what we've got here. That's the power of the conversation that we've got. This is Ivan Kovic. He's an emergency physician, and he took the 1,000 tweeters which were available at this time, currently on Twitter, and worked out how their relationships molded, who the key influencers were, how the conversation went. And the emergency medicine conversation is amazing. Absolutely amazing. We'll go through just a couple of quick examples in a second. This has now changed. We're now up to 1,560. The closest person to us is dermatology with 120. Well, what else have we got today? So just quickly then, the key tools from my point of view: blogs, podcasts, apps everybody knows about. I'm not going to go through videos of social networks, and I want to let you know about GMEP as well. Blogs point of view, Life in Fastlane, we've got the 137 emergency medicine blogs which are currently active in the world. You can go in and see them. We have bloggers sitting in the front row here. We have bloggers, I'm sure, somewhere in the back row there. I can't see because of the lights, but there are some amazing resources out there. Absolutely amazing. We're from QA blogs to personal blogs to intervention blogs to people talking about IT and different parameters of public health. The conversation is absolutely amazing. The key thing to do is to explore these blogs. Have a look at them. They're not all going to be for you, but there's going to be information there which you're certainly going to benefit from. Take the RSS feed, put it into Google Reader, use something like Feedly to have a magazine approach to what you're doing. This is a quick run through if you don't use it already. So this is what a Google Reader looks like. So this is just a sample of one of my Google Readers. So if I'm going into, this is emergency medicine, so I'm looking into the emergency thing, you can see everything that's coming up. When you open it up, you can read it all in line, in context. You don't actually have to go to the blog or do anything else like that. You can see the images. If you want to know more, if you want to write a comment, you can do that. The advantage of Feedly is that it basically runs off Google Reader. It keeps everything up to date for you. You can organize everything nice and simply. You can then tweet, add it to Facebook, put it on LinkedIn, put anything else you want. You can annotate it, add comments to it, all within your own browser. And it works beautifully on the iPad. That's blogs. Podcasts, again, an unbelievable resource. The drive to work, the train commute, the air flight coming here, 24 hours of travel, managed to go back through all of Scott Weingart's work for the last 6 months. Absolutely fantastic. You've got people like Scott, who is unbelievable. Bringing upstairs care downstairs. Matt and Mike, Ultrasound podcast, fantastic. A little bit irrelevant, but very, very good. Rob Warman. And then you've got people, and Andy Neal's here now with his anatomy podcasts. You've got an amazing wealth of information which is out there, just waiting to be tapped. Smart EM has got to be the most unbelievable podcast, full stop. Scott's brilliant, up to date, bit of controversy. Smart EM takes everything back to basics, strips it back to the very, very core of why we do things, when we do things, why we actually give non-steroidals, PPI. It's fantastic. It's an amazing resource, and it's all free. So I just want to quickly touch on the GMEP. We've just hit the on button on GMEP. It's the Global Medical Education Project. Over the last 4 years, I've built this, and it's basically the principle of free open access education. It's a resource which takes everything from Twitter and Facebook and Google+, every API, every UI that you've got, and allows you to store your media, write multi-choices, interact with other people, and we'll go through that in a second. Just want to give you 2 quick practical examples of how Twitter and Google+ has actually made a difference. So this is a recent example, 180 kilo male with a pneumothorax, and they wanted to try and work out how to get the chest drain through the 7.5 inches of adiposity between his skin and his rib cage. And they decided that the Seldinger bougie technique would be reasonable. So we've got Seth Truger, who's out in New York, just posted a comment that his brother-in-law was going to do this. Scott Weingart then gets on board. So we're talking 5-10 minutes later saying, I don't think that it's going to be long enough. Can anyone take a photo? So then we've got Ryan Radicki, who said, absolutely, we can do that, get it sorted for you. Find the ICC, popped the Seldinger through it, took a picture, uploaded it. We're now sort of 20 minutes down the track now. Michelle Lynn, who writes tips and tricks, academic life and emergency medicine, said that's superb. That's the sort of thing that we need to put together, and I'll do research on the evidence for it. Graham Walker was in the sim lab, so now we're sort of 45 minutes later, and he says, look, I can actually put that together for you. I can do better than just that simple picture of the bougie. So he did the entire sim using a bougie to demonstrate the effectiveness of a Seldinger technique, using a bougie to help out in this situation where a pneumothorax needed to be drained. Chris Nixon, Life in the Fast Lane, comes on board, says that's fantastic, we'll put it together. 4 minutes later, there's a blog post up and running, again discussing the pros and cons, who can actually make comments on this. A couple of days later, Michelle then does the full literature review on this, the risks of the patient, etc., etc. And so that's an active, real-time procedural innovation. There's a problem, we need to fix that problem. We can do that. We're a community. This is not just tapping someone on the shoulder in an emergency department. This is happening real time, all the time, 24 hours a day. And it's an amazing conversation. It's an amazing ride. Publications, research, it's all changed. Back in 2008, and then through to July 2009, Scott Weingart was doing DSI. So he had combative patients with delirium, and he wanted to actually help them out to sedate them, but couldn't pre-oxygenate them. So he kind of invented DSI, delayed sequence intubation, by sedating them and then giving them CPAP or BiPAP. Submitted that publication, so that obviously took between July 2009 and April 2010 before it went into EPUB. Still got no comments, still got no feedback, still nobody was using it. So he put out a podcast. That initial podcast got 120,000 downloads. The conversation that occurred because of that allowed DSI modifications to occur. It changed and saved lives because it was something that needed to be out there in the public space. And then finally it got published, but there was no fuss about the publication because the publication was irrelevant. All the conversation with all the major parties had already happened. And that's, again, the power of social media. Asynchronous learning is basically online learning, contextual learning, trying to say, I'm in this space, I need to know this, this, and this, being able to see images, see videos, see journal articles, see blog posts, get everything pulled together at the same time. This basically is the fundamental of where I think we should be as emergency physicians. And so rather than just talking about it, that's what I built. And so this allows you to go into the GMEP, the Global Medical Education Project, and actually upload your media. Other people can write MCQs on it. You can write MCQs on it. You can see how other people actually respond to your MCQs. You get difficulty scores. You can modify your multiple choices. You can store them in folders so you can use them as teaching. Everything's online. Everything's free. It's using all the principles of social media, everything that we do every day, using the apps and everything else, but without calling it Twitter, without calling it Facebook. You can actually just use a simple online platform. And I know I've mentioned the word social media 5 billion times in this talk, but it is definitely something that when I talk to my colleagues, I'm trying to move away from. I'm trying not to use the generic terms of Twitter and Facebook. I'm trying not to get the skeptic responses. I'm trying not to get the derision that I get from using social media, because it's an amazingly powerful tool. And when you look back at the transcript, when you go to Simpler, SYMPLUR, and you look up ICEM2012, and you can see every picture of all the slides, of all the conferences, all the speakers, all the conversation that's happening in real time, it'll blow your mind. Then when we get JOLX and GMEP, we're basically going to upload every single audio from every single talk, again for free, which will all be on here, so the conversation can continue. And that's the power of social media. And they're just examples of where we are at the moment. So read, interpret, share, explore, the rise of social media. Everything we do, instead of keeping it to ourselves, instead of waiting for a journal club and having a discussion on it, everything now, all that conversation takes place online. Everything that we do takes place online. Thank you very much.